Hello, this is our second lecture in week 4, and we're going to go over now the Varna, Ashrama, Dharma system and the stages of life in which human beings undergo. And what you have is male and female differences. We spoke about the male, the 4 stages, and now we have the female aspect of this laws and how they operate. One thing that you have to keep in mind is the females are seen as very fickle and what will you say, uh, subordinate to the man and also incapable of liberty. And one of the very politically incorrect statements that you will find in places like the laws of Manu is that women are not allowed to be under their own guidance because they are nymphomaniacs. Do you know what that word means? It just simply means they have an incessant desire to be mischievous in sexual practices, and they have this voracious um, inclination to engage in sexual intercourse with whomever at whatever time, regardless whether they are handsome or bad looking. It does not matter. They are just going to run after men. And so the operating assumption is that they need to be under the care of somebody. In this case, it's going to be a man, of course. And so the 3 stages of a woman are going to be designated in relation to another male oversight to that person. So the first aspect, of course, is going to be girlhood, and that is under the tutelage and care of the father. So the father is going to make sure that she gets the proper education, which is under the mother. She is it's a matriarchal culture where the mother has a very central figure, central point in the relationships in the home. In fact, when you get married in Hinduism, you don't go and depart from your father and mother. You actually all live in one house ordinarily in India, and the mother, well, in this case, the mother, she becomes the matriarchal of the home, and she is the one that has primacy over the other ladies, the daughters-in-laws, and it is the obligation of the daughters-in-laws to carry deference and respect and obedience to the mother-in-law, who is the one that actually has understanding and has gone through this process and who can mentor them through this new phase of life of becoming a bride and a mother. So what you have here is the father is make sure that this daughter is has a marriage that is arranged for her, and so that is a process that goes on. The way it is done is by dowry, of course. The, the the father who has a daughter, he needs to provide some money for the male, and what's going to happen here is part of doing this is trying to marry within the same caste. That's going to be very important. That is something that kind of we overlook in the West, and that is the influence that our immediate family has on the formation of our own characters, and the degree to which they were educated or uneducated, or the socioeconomical status of each person. So in India, it is of utmost importance that she be or he be from a proper family, because the Hindus place a lot of emphasis upon the immediate effect that will have on the character and discipline and habits that young man is going to have, or young woman. So not so much the looks as it is habitual in the West, love at first sight and things of that kind. In the East, especially in Indian culture, the understanding is that if the person was brought up in a family well-to-do with proper discipline and care, they will become a well-rounded human being who will have good qualities that can be loved. And notice what I said, can be loved, and that is you learn to love the other person. It doesn't necessarily have to be physical attraction at first sight or the zing factor. The Hindus believe that given enough time, under different circumstances, you can come to appreciate what is unique about that other person, what is a gift in them, and then learn to love them, which is more than just attraction. Attraction kind of comes and goes. But learning to love someone requires a certain maturity on understanding what's unique about them and what is so good, and in what sense they are a blessing to your life and the lives of others. So you may not be as attracted to your bride per se. She may not be particularly good looking, but she may be an exceptional caregiver, or a wonderful mother, or a very um, not so much attractive wife as a wife that has inner beauty and is able to communicate and commune with the husband in equal understanding. So you may have many aspects in which you come to know another person. So what you have here is the young lady is given in an arranged marriage to a male, and that is done at an early age. It could done as early as age 7 and 8. They don't consummate until much later. Um, and 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 then when the young lady is given into marriage, which if you have never attended a Hindu wedding, you're missing out. They are quite a lavish under. It's such a lavish event. It is so filled with ritualism and just luxury and abundance. And in India, in fact, what you have is seasons of marriage. Marriages go on for weeks and weeks. That doesn't mean that one wedding goes on for weeks, but there are marriages being practiced for weeks. And what you do is you just go there and see them during this time as new couples get married, and the gurus go through the rituals, and then there are feasts for the whole community. But the the embroils and the jewels and the dress, it is exquisitely detailed and luxurious, and it's just it's a very it's very different. It's very ornamented over and against a more simpler weddings that you see in the Western part. So if you have Hindu friends, so make sure that they invite you to a nice wedding, and they do spend a lot of money. The one that I went to was at least 100,000, if not more. They got all the garments from India, and they got the guru and the entire attire, and it was quite an event. So now that you come to the woman is under the household, and that is under the husband's guidance, and they are united in their karma, as I mentioned. She has certain responsibilities there, and she is under the mother-in-law, and she will be greatly blessed. May you be the mother of 100 pretty much males. There is a book that speaks of that, and just describing the internal dynamics of how much more the giving of birth to males is prized over and against females. And if you want to be in the good side of your mother-in-law, you better give birth to a male in the first round, and that places you above the other daughters-in-laws, and it just shows the favor of the gods upon you. So it is still very much male-oriented, and of course you're going to be responsible for household responsibilities, raising children, and the like. Under this time, there are three things to keep in mind. One is called Stri Dharma, which is the example of the good wife, and that's the exemplar of what a good wife should be, one that is submissive. And you see that even in Hindu practices, by which if you see a Hindu couple walking on the streets, I know it looks a bit odd for Westerners, but usually the man is walking ahead of the wife, and she is following anywhere between 3 to 10 feet behind him. And that is an act of reverence of the wife. The husband is leading, she is following, and he is the one that is, it's not equals in equal terms. There's certain deference that is exemplified in that practice. Then you have what's called the sharing of karma, and this is going to give rise to one of the practices that got completely outlawed by the British. The practice is what's called sati. Sati means going with. So the British, when they came into India, they encountered this practice, which was to them abominable. Kind of like food binding in China too was outlawed by Westerners. They saw that to be an uncompromising practice that was beneath human beings. And so what happened here is, if your husband dies, then he died in connection to your karma. And since your souls are united, then your responsibility is to go with, and that's the practice called sati. Now what that means is that ordinarily a wife will voluntarily be buried alive with the husband. Now, in some cases, it was involuntary, which means your family may have forced you to fulfill your responsibility um, for being with your husband. So if he dies, then you could be thrown into the funeral pit. So the British made that against the law. The last example of this happening was in the 1980s. So it is a practice still. It is still there in the Vedas and the laws of Manu, but it is not really carried out in India today. It's a very rare thing. So the British outlawed it and has been set aside. But notice the theological background to this, which is keeping your mind in that which is of lasting value and being united with the one that is your the complement to your life in future lives as well is something to be kept in mind as more important than just staying alive. So here is where if you do not engage in the practice of sati, then you are left into a very, very dishonorable and looked down upon state of life, and that is widowhood. Now, when a woman in Hinduism became a widow, she literally became an outcast. Now, you're still under the sun's protections now. So first you were under your father, then under your husband, and now under your sons. But what tended to happen is that it is tantamount to getting leprosy in the Roman Empire and in the ancient world, which means when you got leprosy, you could not hang around ordinary human beings because you will become a pollution to them. And so what they did is they kind of kicked them out to cities where they were only lepers. You can see that in the movie Ben-Hur. That was a famous example of that. So what you have here is the widows are prohibited from remarrying. So the remarriage has been a very recent phenomenon in India, the influence of secularism in the last 50 years or so. But what would happen is that you will be outcast. You will be what you say excommunicated into one of these towns, and what you would have is a miserable existence where you will forever, for the rest of your life, be looked down upon as an unfaithful wife who refused to partake in the destiny of the husband and refused to take responsibility for the karma that led to the death of the husband. So it was a very, very much denigrated way of life that was quite a scar or psychological trauma to a person, but yet that had been practiced for 4,000 years, and even today, remarriage in Hinduism is still seen as something that is not well received. I'm going to pause at this point, and I am going to go over a few of the laws that we have in a book that I used in the past, just to give you a sense of what the laws of Manu look like.